Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel, and following a great weekend for Celtic in the Scottish Premiership, it's time to recap on all the things that we missed over the last few days, which I just didn't get time to cover due to the podcast recording and because of the game being on a Saturday night. It was a bit of a weird weekend in terms of video time. So today we're going to talk about yesterday, we're going to talk about Wednesday, we're going to try and catch up in general about everything at Celtic Football Club. Strap yourselves in and let's talk about all of that. If you haven't already, please make sure to hit like and subscribe. It would be much appreciated. We're trying to get as close as we can to 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Let's try and cross the 47k mark. There's only a couple more hundred subscribers to go. If you haven't been down there, hit both those buttons. It's absolutely free. And thank you for the support during this international break where I think, we're all a bit bored, You still supported me, and that's what matters most. So let's catch up. Let's talk about Celtic now that they're back. So here it is, in all its glory, the Scottish Premiership table after the weekend. Celtic top of the league by 3 points. We move clear of second place Aberdeen after they lost at St Mirren Park yesterday, and of course we extend our lead over Rangers in third place as well when they dropped points to Dundee United at Ibrox. It was a fantastic weekend for Celtic. For the first time this season, we create a gap, a cushion at the top of the table. We've been neck and neck, Aberdeen matching us stride for stride up until this point, but they just fell short yesterday. And a lot of people saying now, is this where Celtic begin to run away with it? Listen, Celtic should be winning the league. It's as simple as that. I don't think there was ever a question as to who would win the league this year. Aberdeen fans are right to dream. I think they were allowed to dream, and they should still be allowed to dream. They've lost one game. They're still only 3 points behind Celtic, but this is a league that Celtic should have been winning without question anyway, and we now find ourselves top by 3 points. We'll see where it goes from here. Great weekend. Rangers as well, slipping for 11 points behind. 11 points. Don't worry, Rangers fans. You closed the gap on Aberdeen. So at least there's something positive that came from the weekend for you. But another fantastic result for Celtic yesterday, which carries on our great start to the season. At a tough venue, we know that Tynecastle can be a tricky place to go, despite them being 11th in the league this season. It's still a place that you can slip up at, and Rangers done it first game of the season. We could have easily done it yesterday, first half. We weren't at the races. We had to pull ourselves out a bit of a rut. We've seen a lot of similarities from our performance at Rugby Park in that first half. If Hearts were a better team this season, if players were on form, they might have scored 1 or 2 in the first half. They could have hurt Celtic and we could have been talking about a completely different result, but we hung in there, we defended well. And second half, we've seen a lot more of the Celtic we've been used to this season. So, there was ups and downs from yesterday's game, and certain players have been singled out. But I'm happy with what I've seen. If you give me the result alone, if you isolate a 4-1 win at Tynecastle, and take away the conversation surrounding it and the performances surrounding it, I'm happy. I don't care how you've played. If you go to Tynecastle and win 4-1, that's all that matters. So a great result for us. Top of the league, but a lot of talking points, to say the least. Nicholas Kuhn, who is just continuing to blow my mind as the season goes on. He has been unbelievable and is well on track to being Player of the Year, not only at Celtic, but in the Scottish Premiership. Well, I don't know about that. They'll still find a way to give the award to Lawrence Shankland, but nonetheless, he has just been unbelievable, and the goal yesterday is one of the best he's scored all season, and I feel like I'm saying that every week. He seems to score a cracker as the weeks go on, and he's just a great player, and rightfully getting looked at by Julian Nagelsmann at the Germany setup, because he's one of the most informed players in Europe at the minute, and hopefully we see that again on Wednesday night when it comes to the Champions League. He has been sensational, and we're so lucky to have a player like that at the club at the minute. Of course, it was a big day for Kyogo and Adam Ida, who scored goals. Ida actually grabbing 2, and I think that was huge for the strikers. They needed that, so a lot of positives from the attacking point of view. I think one of the biggest talking points has come in the middle of the park, where Arne Engels has been subject to a lot of criticism as he failed to impress press again yesterday. I can't stress this enough. I'm not on the back of Arne Engels yet. I will criticise him when I need to, and if he's not playing well, I will be honest about that. And he hasn't been playing all that well in recent games. But, you know, he's a young lad. He's very early into his Celtic career, and I feel like us as fans should have learned that lesson by now, not to jump on players too quickly. You know, if Celtic fans on social media had their way, you know, there was a point where Matt O'Reilly was down and out as a Celtic player. There was a point where people were saying he was useless and that he should have been dropped and that he would never make it. And then he goes off to be Celtic's first ever £30 million player. So, you know, there's a long way to go in development for Arne Engels, and he hasn't been great of late. But, you know, just support the lad, and I'm sure that we'll get the best out of him. There is a player in there, absolutely. And may I remind you that this was the same Arne Engels that people were comparing to Matt O'Reilly 2 or 3 games into his Celtic career. So, you know, we're a very reactionary fan base, and whether or not he starts or not on Wednesday night after the weekend's performance, that's a huge game for him to try and, you know, pull one out the bag and show it at the highest level the kind of player that he is. But the conversation will start now as to whether or not him or Paulo Bernardo should start in the midfield on Wednesday. People shouting from the rooftops that Bernardo should get the start, and I think that he came off the bench yesterday and showed yet again what a good player he is. He's just that guy that's in an unfortunate position just now, that we have a very talented midfield, and he's the one that suffered the fate of the bench more than others. But I love Paulo Bernardo. I love them all. I love all of our midfielders. That's the thing. You know, I really don't mind who starts games at the minute, because I think all of them have positives, and all of them have clear negatives as well. All of them have bits of their game that they need to work on. But we are in a good position when it comes to midfield options at the club at the minute. And yeah, listen, Arne Engels, I'm not overly concerned about where his career will end up, because I know he'll come more than good for Celtic. But it was a struggle for him yesterday. There's no doubt about that. And it takes us into Wednesday nicely. You know, I'm feeling good about that game. I know that Bruges won 7-0 at the weekend, which is a warning, to say the least, but I'm really confident for it, and that's not me saying that I'm really confident that Celtic win this game with ease. I just feel good going into it. I think Celtic are well placed. The Leipzig performance, of course, helps as well with going into these games. It's nice feeling like that going into these European games. It really is. So let's hope we keep up that form that we've seen against Leipzig. Let's hope that we keep up the form that we've showed domestically. It's been such a great start to the season. And that's when you get the most pernickety moments out of Celtic fans. You know, when there's not a lot to moan about, you need to find something to moan about. So, yeah, all positivity here on the Ryan 118 channel. And let's get into some of the news that we missed, which is very positive news from the club. Alistair Johnston got his contract extension. Beautiful news for Celtic fans and Alistair Johnston fans like myself. The news came on Friday morning after waiting throughout the entire international break for it to drop. Celtic said this, that they are delighted to announce they have agreed a new contract with Canadian internationalist Alistair Johnston, which will run until the summer of 2029. It's an extension on a deal which was due to run until the summer of 2027, I believe. So a nice extension for one of Celtic's top players this season, a very important player in this setup. People talking about him potentially being the next captain of the club. He's someone that I want to see stay here. I never want to talk about the possibility of him leaving. I think he would be so hard to replace. He's one of the best fullbacks that I've seen at Celtic in my lifetime, on either side of the pitch, and I mean that when I say that. He's just brilliant. And yeah, I'd love to see him be the next captain of Celtic if he wants to commit his future to the club. So a nice wage rise for him, a nice extension on his time here at the club. He's delighted, Brendan's delighted, and I know us as supporters, we are equally as delighted. That wasn't the only contract extension that was signed at Celtic over the weekend though, because James Forrest also put pen to paper on a new 1-year extension, which also came as well received news from the Celtic fans. Celtic said that they were delighted to extend James Forrest deal, another year extension that will run to the summer of 2026. A lot of talk about his longevity as a Celtic player, and a deal that I'm not surprised to see come through for many different reasons. More than deserved for Jamesy Forrest, I would say. I would like to see him finish his career here with Celtic, and I don't know, maybe at the end of this year, at the end of that deal, I should say, he'll still feel like he's got something in him to keep playing football. Maybe Celtic will extend it by another year come 2026. I don't know. Well, come in store the next 2 years for James Forrest. I really don't. I don't know how much football James Forrest will play over the next 2 years, but what I do know is he deserves to be rewarded by the club. His services have been unmatched in recent times. He's well on track to becoming the club's most decorated player ever. And he's on track for many different accolades that you could only dream of as a Celtic supporter. So a deserved extension for James Forrest. I'm glad to see it. Someone who, yes, I've been and we've all been a bit critical of times, but ultimately you can't deny his sort of importance as a Celtic player over the past 15 years. So yeah, a deserved extension for James Forrest. However, someone who didn't sign a contract over the weekend for Celtic, and someone who we still wait to see an extension for, is Greg Taylor. The jury is out as to whether or not he will get a new contract, or if he should get a new contract at Celtic. A very split opinion, it seems, amongst the Celtic support. But Brendan Rodgers did comment over the weekend in regards to his Celtic future, saying that he was very hopeful that they would sign a new contract with Greg Taylor. This was his comments at the press conference on Friday afternoon, saying that he's very hopeful that they can come to an agreement with Taylor over a new contract, but nothing is close at this moment. He doesn't think anything is close, but I repeat, it's definitely something I want to do. I have to respect both sides on that, from Greg's side, from the club side, from a managerial side. I really want him to stay here, and I really hope we can do everything to keep him, but I also respect Greg's position. And that all but confirms what I've been saying for the past 6 months. I've told you a million times, Greg Taylor's contract is not a Celtic problem that's holding it up. It's a Greg Taylor problem. And I've got nothing against Greg Taylor in relation to that. If Greg Taylor isn't 100% committed to signing a new deal at Celtic, if he doesn't have the terms that he wants as a football player at this stage of his career to stay with Celtic, he should be allowed freely to move on and challenge himself elsewhere and go and try and get a starting jersey. Because I just don't see it happening at Celtic. And I think that's why, in Brendan Rodgers' own words, nothing is close. Because I think that Greg Taylor doesn't want to be sitting on a bench every week. But realistically, I think that's what Celtic's plans for him is. I think that's what Brendan Rodgers' plans for him are. We know that Greg Taylor has his limitations. A good player, but certainly with his limitations. And I think that naturally, if you're trying to progress this squad to a certain level and this team to a certain level, Greg Taylor is one of the obvious names who don't get in that starting 11. It's as simple as that. You know, we need to improve in that area. And I think he's a fine backup. I think he's a more than fine backup. But Greg Taylor probably doesn't want that at this stage of his career. He's 27 years old. He's in his prime years. He wants to be playing football at this stage. It's not like he's in his 30s now and he's fine to be sitting on the bench every week. He wants to play. So this is a Greg Taylor thing that is holding this up, not a Celtic thing. And I've been saying that for months. So it's nice to feel vindicated. It's nice. Yeah. Anyway, that's that. And then, of course, we had the Celtic AGM on Friday morning. Now, usually I would do a full video in itself to dive deep into the AGM. If you still want that, please let me know in the comments below, because I've ran this video on long enough today, and if I try and dive deep into it, we will be here all night in this one singular video. So if you want a deep dive into the AGM, please let me know down in the comments. But generally, not too much happened. Stadium expansion was the biggest talking point, it seemed, coming out of the AGM. There was a lot of talk about that. There was, of course, the same amount of Celtic dads who stand up making their jokes about Rangers, which wastes everybody's time in the building. So if you're one of those guys who went along to ask Peter Lawwell who was the last Celtic player to score against Rangers and to talk about Rangers 2012 and all the rest of it, stop it, please. Stop wasting their time and everybody's time. There was more jokes in the room about Rangers liquidation than there was conversation about a ticket exchange system at Celtic Park, which is utterly embarrassing, to say the least, and it proper pisses me off. You know, we need these AGMs to be platforms to improve areas of the club which are clearly behind in the times. And sadly, some of these guys going along to crack the same jokes every year, thinking it's a stand-up routine when the floor's open, is not going to take the club anywhere. So pack it in. You know, I'm 24, and I feel like I could have went along to that AGM and sat there with a lot more dignity intact than some people 3 times my age in the room. So, yeah, not a lot of productive conversation happened at the AGM, I thought, this year. It was the first, I said this on Hamish's channel the other night, it was the first AGM that I'd went into as a supporter thinking not much is going to come out of this today. And that things were generally quite positive amongst supporters and the board. So, I didn't expect much to happen, but I was disappointed that there wasn't too much talk in relation to the fan forum, in relation to systems like a ticket exchange idea. Yeah, if you want a deep dive, let me know and we can talk about it in a longer form video. Anyway, that's it for today. Thank you. I'm going to jump off now because I've wasted enough of your time. I hope you've enjoyed your weekend. Celtic are top of the league. Hail, hail. We're gone for 55. I'll see you all next time.